And in the thick of battle, the lid could be used as a shield. Now, keep in mind it's light armor and the damper hole might let arrows through. Hello and welcome back to Cold War Barbecue. We recently did a review and barbecue test of the dirt cheap Expert Grill 17.5-inch charcoal grill, and it occurred to me that the intended audience for that video probably are barbecue newbies, barbecuebies, if you will. Because of that, I wanted to run through 6-ish tips and suggestions to make your grill last longer and to make your overall grilling experience better. In barbecue, the wind is always your greatest foe. This is true whether you're running a giant offset or a small charcoal grill. There are numerous reasons for this. First, it's applicable to all type of barbecues. High wind causes high airflow, which in turn causes higher temperatures. On a larger smoker, these things can be mitigated by damper control, opening the doors, things of that sort. But if you're running a small grill, closing off all your dampers will starve your fire. The second is specific to charcoal grills. Wind coming in through either the bottom or the top damper or the wind tunnel that it creates through here will cause ash from your charcoal pile to spin up in the grill and cover your food. That's not good eating. Well, not to me. Everyone's different. So how do we mitigate this? Well, obviously, if we can avoid barbecuing on days where there's really high wind, that's going to help. However, there are going to be times where you've got a cookout planned, Memorial Day, something like that, and you're expected to perform. And on those days, if you can, you're going to want to try and find a wind barrier on at least two sides. Box in your grill and block the wind from two directions. This should kind of cut down on that wind tunnel effect and at least keep the ash from coming up, although you will still have to be mindful of higher temperatures. Note, too, that this little grill doesn't get all that hot on the outside, so you can go a little closer to the house than you would with a larger smoker, unless you've got vinyl siding. Not a good idea to melt that. This tip is also applicable to all types of smokers, but it's especially important here. First thing to remember is you should always empty the firebox of ash after the cooking is done and they're suitably cooled. Might want to give it about 24 hours to be safe. It should be a powder at that point and no remaining embers or coal. Don't leave them in there until the next cook. Why? I'm glad you asked. See, ashes, especially when they get wet, are caustic. So whether it's rain or even just high humidity outside, it'll start to wet those ashes and they will start to eat through metal. That's not a big deal on a 1/4-inch plate steel offset. It's going to take a very, very long time for that to happen. But on this, with the thin aluminum, it's going to happen in a matter of potentially weeks, depending on the climate, but certainly over the course of a month. If you don't use it very often, you might come back to find that the bottom is rusted out. If you want to keep this grill for the long haul, keep it clean. On that subject, it's always a good idea to keep your grates clean too. You'll still want to brush them before a cook, but after you finish and things start to cool down, it's a good idea to wipe it down. This keeps bits of food and grease and things like that off of these grates. These porcelain grates, if they've got stuff that sticks on them, it can pull the coating off and then you end up with a rusty grate, and hence, the next time, rusty food. Not good eating. For me, anyway. And if you don't have a brush, it's no real big deal. After your cook is done and it's cooled off a bit, you can use a tongs and a wet rag or even a thick paper towel, and it'll clean it great. Just don't do it while fire's burning. This tip is one that's more important for smaller grills. Remember, this is thin metal, right? Anything that gets on the outside of this grill can reduce the life of it. Bird droppings, of course, the ash that can get wet, all sorts of food particles, things like that. All of those can eat away at this paint and make the grill rust out. Covering it also prevents, at least to some extent, small critters and insects and things like that from getting in here. There's nothing worse than going to grill and opening it up and finding you have a giant paper wasp nest inside. For this grill, you can just get the covers that work for Weber kettle grills. I think it even says that on the box that a kettle grill cover is fine. If Walmart doesn't have it, Lowe's or Home Depot will. As a bonus, that cover will add some weight to this, so if the wind comes up, it's less likely to blow it over. Unless you've got a covered patio and an airtight charcoal bin, you should probably be taking your leftover charcoal in the house. Leaving it outside will cause it to absorb moisture from the air, or obviously if it rains. And really that means that the next time it won't burn as well. It'll take longer to start, it won't burn as hot, it won't burn as evenly. Also, don't store it on the shelf below the grill. First thing is you don't want the paper on that bag to come in contact with the underside of a hot grill. But also, the surface of the grill isn't big enough to keep it from being rained on, and it certainly won't help it with any moisture in the air. And that's even true if it is covered. Instead, you can use that shelf at the bottom for your charcoal chimneys. That one is self-explanatory. Robots are very, very strong. You might be able to cheat if you take some of that ash and coat it on them and it becomes caustic, but who has that kind of time? I don't. This last tip is more for the cooking process. If you watched our first video on this grill, you'll notice we made extensive use of the hot zone and the cool zone. Make that your friend. We kept our fire on one side and the other side was much cooler. You could use that other side for that gradual heat and smoke. There aren't going to be too many situations where you'd want to fill this thing entirely up with charcoal. For one thing, you'd lose complete control over any sort of temperature. You don't have the ability to raise and lower the grates in here. All you'd be able to do is pull your food off for a little bit or char the outside while the inside's not done. That's not good practice. Plus, you'll save a bunch of money by not using so much charcoal each time you cook. It's your lucky day. I'm giving you a free bonus tip. We showed it in our last video in the cook-off, and it's very important if you're thinking about it from a budgetary standpoint that you don't use lighter fluid or light the bag or matchlight type charcoal. That charcoal costs more money. The lighter fluid costs more money. That's money you could be using for meat. A lot of people also say that the lighter fluid kind of gives the meat an odd taste. That is true if you throw the meat on while the fire is still burning and before it's ashed over. You should never be doing that anyway, so that's not a big consideration here. We're just looking at saving you money. I hope at least some of these tips were helpful to you. If I think of any more over time, I'll let you know. For right now, I'm kind of curious. What questions do you have about running a small charcoal grill? Could be this one, could be whatever grill that you have. We'd love to help you increase your skill and honestly, kind of further your passion for barbecue and smoke. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this useful. Until next time, this has been Cold War Barbecue.